Sister demanded my apartment to impress her fiancé, then he called me. Hey friends. Got a sec? Drop your thoughts in the comments and hit subscribe. It's quick for you, but it really means a lot to the channel. Alright, let's dive into today's story. Original post. I never thought I'd be writing here, but I need to know if I'm losing my mind or if my family has completely lost touch with reality. I'm a 31-year-old accountant at a mid-sized firm in the city. After years of careful saving, strategic investments, and working 60-hour weeks during tax season, I finally bought my dream apartment last year. It's a 2-bedroom unit on the 15th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Nothing extravagant by luxury standards, but it's mine, and I worked damn hard for every square foot of it. My younger sister is 27 and works as a freelance photographer. She's talented, genuinely gifted with a camera, but she's never been particularly focused on the business side of things. She rents a studio apartment in an artsy neighborhood that she's converted into both living and workspace. It's actually quite charming, exposed brick walls, great natural light, vintage fixtures. Perfect for her aesthetic and lifestyle. 6 months ago, she started dating this guy who works in pharmaceutical sales. He seems decent enough, treats her well from what I can tell. They got engaged last month after a whirlwind romance, and I was genuinely happy for her. That happiness lasted approximately 48 hours. She called me Tuesday evening, and I could tell immediately she was building up to something. You know that tone, overly cheerful, lots of compliments about how I'm the best brother ever, and so understanding about everything. After 10 minutes of this preamble, she finally got to the point. So, I've been thinking, she said, and I should have hung up right there. You know how you're always saying families should support each other? What do you need? I asked, assuming she wanted help with wedding costs. I'd already mentally budgeted a contribution. Well, it's not really about needing something. It's more about optimizing our situations. That's when she dropped the bomb. She wants us to trade apartments. Not temporarily. Permanently. Her reasoning? Her fiancé comes from money. Old money, apparently, and she's worried about what his family will think when they see her cramped artist's hovel. She needs to present the right image and show that she's successful and established. I sat there in stunned silence while she continued explaining how this would actually benefit me too. According to her logic, I don't really need all that space since I'm single. The studio would be cozier and more practical for my lifestyle. Plus, her place is closer to several coffee shops where I could work on weekends, and wouldn't I save money on utilities with a smaller space? You want me to trade my 2-bedroom apartment with harbor views for your studio? I finally managed to say. When you put it like that, it sounds unbalanced, she said, as if there was any other way to put it. But think about it from a family perspective. You'd be investing in my happiness and future. Besides, his parents are coming to visit next month, and first impressions are everything. I tried explaining that I'd purchased my apartment, not rented it. That I have a mortgage, property taxes, HOA fees. That you can't just swap owned property like trading cards. She had an answer for everything. We could work out the details with lawyers. I could rent my place to her for a symbolic amount, while I paid her actual rent. Or better yet, I could sign the deed over to her as an early wedding gift, and she'd let me live in her studio rent-free. Let me get this straight, I said, my voice probably sharper than intended. You want me to give you my apartment, that I saved for 10 years to afford, so you can impress your fiancé's parents? You're making it sound materialistic, she protested. This is about my future, my marriage. Don't you want me to be happy? You can afford another nice place eventually. You make good money. I make decent money, yes. After taxes, loan payments, and living expenses in an expensive city, I'm comfortable but not wealthy. That apartment represents my entire net worth and then some. But according to her, I'm being selfish and unsupportive by not immediately agreeing to this insane proposal. The conversation ended with her saying I should think about it and consider what family really means. She hung up before I could respond. Since then, my phone has been buzzing non-stop. My mother called within an hour, saying my sister was devastated by my harsh reaction. Apparently, I should at least consider the idea because she's only going to get married once, and family makes sacrifices for each other. My father sent a text saying I should be the bigger person, and remember that material possessions aren't everything. My sister has sent me approximately 30 texts ranging from apartment listings for studios I could rent after giving her mine, to articles about minimalist living, to passive-aggressive quotes about the importance of sibling bonds. She also posted on social media about how some people understand that love means sacrifice, with a bunch of cryptic hashtags that our mutual friends have been asking me about. Her latest message includes floor plans she's drawn for how she'll redecorate my apartment and a suggestion that I could sleep on her couch when I visit, so you can still enjoy the harbor views sometimes. She seems to have decided this is happening regardless of my input. I've worked 70-hour weeks during busy seasons. I've eaten ramen for dinner more times than I can count while saving for that down payment. I've passed up vacations, driven the same car for 8 years, and lived with roommates until age 29 to afford this place. And she wants me to hand it over because her fiancé might be impressed? The kicker. I met this guy at their engagement party. He spent half the night talking about how he fell in love with her artistic spirit and how her studio was where they had their first kiss. He literally called it the most romantic space in the city and said he hoped she never changed it. Am I insane for not even considering this? Is there some universe where this request makes sense that I'm not seeing? Because right now, I'm sitting in my apartment, my earned, paid-for apartment, wondering if my entire family has collectively lost their minds. Update 1. The Mentor's Wisdom. It's been a week since my original post, and I wanted to update everyone who responded. Your comments gave me the validation I desperately needed, but I was still struggling with the family pressure. Every day brought new messages from my sister with increasingly creative suggestions for how we could make the apartment swap work. My mother had graduated from disappointed sighs to leaving voicemails about how she didn't raise her children to be materialistic, and how disappointed my late grandmother would be in my selfishness. The stress was affecting my work. I made 2 calculation errors in client reports, caught them before submission, thankfully, but that's not like me. My senior colleague noticed I seemed off during our Thursday morning meeting. This man has been with the firm for 25 years, made partner at 35, and has been an unofficial mentor since I joined 6 years ago. He suggested we grab lunch. Sitting across from him at a quiet restaurant downtown, I found myself spilling the entire story. I expected professional distance, maybe some generic advice about work-life balance. Instead, he set down his coffee cup and gave me a look I'd never seen from him before. "Let me tell you a story," he said. "When I was 32, I'd just made senior accountant. Bought my first house, nothing fancy, but it had a garage and a small yard. I was so proud of that house. My younger brother was getting married to a woman from a wealthy family. Sound familiar?" I nodded, already sensing where this was going. My brother was an artist, sculptor. Talented guy, but perpetually broke. 2 months before the wedding, he asked if we could switch places. He'd take my house, I'd take his apartment above a nightclub. His reasoning was that his fiancé's family owned half of downtown, and he needed to show he could provide stability. "What did you do?" I said yes. He paused, letting that sink in. I was the older brother, the responsible one. Family guilt is a powerful thing. We drew up papers, made it all legal. He paid me a nominal amount to make it official. I moved into his apartment, told myself it was temporary, that I was being a good brother. How long did it last? The marriage. 18 months. Turns out his wife didn't care about the house. She cared that he was willing to manipulate his family to get what he wanted. She saw right through it. When she filed for divorce, guess who kept the house in the settlement? Your brother. His ex-wife. See, once it was in his name, it became marital property. She got it in the divorce. My brother moved back to another small apartment, and I was still stuck in his old place because I'd signed a 5-year lease to help him out with that too. It took me 3 more years to save enough for another down payment, and by then, the market had shifted. That house I'd bought for $80,000? Similar houses were going for $150,000. He leaned forward, his expression serious. But here's what really mattered. The family dynamics never recovered. Once I'd said yes to that insane request, it set a precedent. Every time my brother had a problem, the family expected me to solve it. Credit card debt. I should pay it off. Car broke down. I should buy him a new one. After all, I'd given him a house once, so clearly I was willing and able to sacrifice everything. How did you stop it? I didn't, not for years. The resentment just built up until I barely spoke to any of them. It wasn't until I met my wife, and she pointed out how toxic it all was, that I finally started setting boundaries. By then, I'd lost almost a decade of my life to other people's expectations. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of a beautiful colonial house. That's my home now. Took 15 years longer than it should have to get here. My brother and I barely speak. Not because of anger anymore, just nothing left to say. The house wasn't just property, it was my achievement, my security, my proof that I'd made something of myself. When I gave it away, I gave away a piece of my identity. We spent the next hour role-playing how to handle the conversation with my sister. He had me practice saying no without justification, without apology, just a clear, firm refusal. It felt uncomfortable at first. Every instinct screamed to explain, to soften, to negotiate. Your sister isn't asking for help, he pointed out. She's asking for your achievement. There's a difference between supporting family and enabling entitlement. If her relationship requires an apartment to survive, it's already doomed. He was right about something else too. That evening, I looked up property values in my building. Units like mine are now selling for 20% more than I paid just last year. If I gave it up now, I might never be able to afford anything comparable again. I called my sister that night. Kept it simple, like we'd practiced. I've thought about your request. The answer is no. My apartment is not available for trade, rent, or gift. This isn't a reflection on how much I love you or want you to be happy. I wish you and your fiancé all the best, but you'll need to find another solution. The silence on the other end stretched for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then came the explosion. I was selfish, materialistic, jealous of her happiness, probably hoping her relationship would fail. She accused me of never supporting her dreams, of always being the golden child who hoarded success. I didn't argue. Just kept repeating, I understand you're disappointed, but my decision is final. She hung up on me. Within minutes, my phone exploded with messages from family members. My mother's was the worst, a long voicemail about how she never thought she'd raised such a cold-hearted son and how my grandmother would be spinning in her grave. But something interesting happened. My mentor had warned me about this too. The extinction burst, he called it. When you first set a boundary, people push back harder than ever, hoping you'll break. If you hold firm, eventually they adjust. By day 3, the messages had slowed. My father called, not to pressure but to ask if I was okay. Turns out he'd been uncomfortable with the request from the start but didn't want to get involved. He admitted he'd be devastated if someone asked him to give up the classic car he'd restored. It wasn't about the money but about what it represented. My sister hasn't contacted me directly since that phone call, but I heard from a cousin that she's been touring venue spaces for the wedding. Life is moving on, with or without my apartment. My mentor checked in today, asked how I was doing. I told him about holding firm, about the family reaction. He smiled and said something I won't forget: the first boundary is always the hardest. But once you set it, you'll wonder why you ever lived without it. I'm still processing everything, still dealing with the guilt. But sitting in my apartment tonight, watching the sun set over the harbor, I know I made the right choice. This view, this space, this achievement, it's mine. And that's not selfish. That's self-respect. Update 2. The Fiancé's revelation. It's been 2 months since everything exploded, and I need to share what happened because I'm still processing it myself. After my last update, things went completely silent from my sister's end. The family pressure eased into uncomfortable acceptance. We all attended a cousin's birthday dinner where she and I politely avoided each other while everyone else pretended not to notice the tension. I'd started to accept that this might be our new normal. Then, last Tuesday, I got an unexpected call from her fiancé. We'd never spoken one-on-one before, so seeing his name on my phone was surreal. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was another manipulation tactic. "Hey, I know this is weird," he started, sounding genuinely uncomfortable. "But can we meet for coffee? There's something you should know." Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a neutral location downtown the next morning before work. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't been sleeping well. He ordered black coffee and got straight to the point. "I heard about the apartment thing," he said. "Not from your sister. She never told me. I found out from your cousin at that birthday dinner when I asked why you two weren't talking." I braced myself for another lecture about family supporting each other, but instead, he rubbed his face and let out a long breath. "I need you to know that I never wanted her apartment. I never cared about where she lived. Hell, I love that little studio. That's where we had our first date, where I realized I was falling for her. The light in there at sunset, the way she's arranged everything, it's perfectly her. Then why? That's what I've been trying to figure out for the past week." He pulled out his phone, showed me some texts. After I found out, I confronted her. Asked her why she needed your apartment to impress me or my family. You know what she said? That I deserved someone who could match my lifestyle. The texts were painful to read. My sister spinning elaborate justifications about social expectations, about fitting into his world, about being worthy of his family's respect. His responses were increasingly frustrated, asking where this was coming from, insisting he'd never said or implied any of this. "My parents have met her 3 times, he continued. "They adore her. My mom literally has one of her photographs framed in her living room. She bought it at full price from her last gallery show. They keep asking when we're going to have kids because they can't wait for grandchildren with her artistic genes. So where did she get these ideas? He showed me more texts from a group chat she was in with some other women planning weddings. The conversation was toxic. Constant comparisons of ring sizes, venue costs, honeymoon destinations. One woman bragged about convincing her fiancé to upgrade her engagement ring. Another posted about how she'd threatened to call off the wedding unless they bought a house in a specific neighborhood. She got sucked into this competitive wedding culture, he said. These women she barely knows convinced her that love means material proof, that your worth as a bride depends on what you can display. She started following all these social media accounts about luxury weddings, comparing our plans to people with trust funds and family money. He took a long drink of coffee before continuing. I make good money in pharmaceutical sales, but I'm not wealthy. My parents are comfortable, but they're retired teachers, not oil tycoons. We live below our means by choice. The wedding she's been planning? She's put deposits on vendors we can't afford without going into serious debt. When I suggested scaling back, she accused me of not loving her enough. What are you going to do? I almost called it off last week. The admission hung between us like a weight. I told her I couldn't marry someone who valued appearances over reality, who would manipulate her own brother for a lifestyle prop. She broke down completely. Not angry crying, the real kind, where she could barely breathe. He explained that they'd been in intensive couples counseling for the past 3 weeks. The therapist had helped uncover that my sister's behavior stemmed from deep insecurity about not having a traditional career path. Surrounded by friends with corporate jobs and steady salaries, she'd started feeling like her artistic success wasn't real success. The apartment thing was apparently the culmination of months of this building anxiety, he said. She convinced herself that if she could just present the right image, she'd finally feel worthy. The therapist called it external validation seeking as a replacement for internal self-worth. Is it helping? The counseling? Yeah, actually. It's like she woke up from something. She's deleted all those wedding planning groups, unfollowed the luxury accounts. We've canceled most of the expensive vendors, lost deposits but avoided debt. We're planning something simple now, immediate family, her studio as the venue since that's where our story started. He paused, seemed to be gathering courage. She wants to apologize to you. Not to get your apartment. That shame will probably never fully go away, but because the counselor helped her see how she turned you into collateral damage in her insecurity spiral. I don't know if I'm ready for that, I admitted. Fair. Completely fair. But I wanted you to know that none of this came from me or my family. If anything, I fell in love with her because she wasn't materialistic, because she found beauty in simplicity. Watching her turn into someone obsessed with status symbols has been heartbreaking. We finished our coffee in relative silence. As he got up to leave, he turned back. Your boundaries saved us, you know. If you'd given her the apartment, we would have built our marriage on a lie. She would have spent the whole relationship terrified of being exposed as not enough. The counselor says your refusal forced her to confront what she was really afraid of. That evening, I got a text from my sister. Not demanding, not manipulative. Just, I'm in therapy working on myself. When you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like to talk. Not about apartments. About us. Final update. The wedding. 6 months have passed since the apartment situation exploded our family dynamic, and I'm writing this final update from my laptop, still in my apartment with those harbor views I refuse to surrender. But more importantly, I'm writing this the morning after my sister's wedding. It took 2 months after her initial text before I felt ready to meet with her. We chose a public park, neutral ground where either of us could leave if needed. She looked different, not physically, but something in her posture had changed. The performative confidence was gone, replaced with something quieter, more genuine. She didn't launch into apologies immediately. Instead, she asked about my work, about the view from my apartment that morning, normal things we used to talk about. When she finally addressed the elephant in the room, her words were clearly rehearsed but sincere. I turned into someone I didn't recognize, she said. I got so caught up in proving I was successful that I forgot I already was. I had exhibitions, clients who loved my work, a man who loved me for me, and a brother who had always supported my dreams. But somehow that wasn't enough because it didn't look impressive on social media. She explained how the therapy had uncovered patterns going back years, constantly comparing herself to our school friends who went traditional routes, feeling like the family saw her as the flaky artist, while I was the successful accountant. The engagement had triggered all these insecurities at once. The apartment request, she paused, visibly struggling, was the most shameful thing I've ever done. I justified it as being about love, about my future, but it was about my ego. I wanted to take your achievement because I couldn't face my own perceived failures. I asked her the question that had been bothering me for months. Did you really think I'd say yes? Part of me knew it was insane, she admitted. But I'd gotten so deep into this wedding planning echo chamber that insane started seeming normal. Women were posting about demanding their fiancé's mother's jewelry, about making their bridesmaids pay for $1,000 dresses. Someone asked their sister to postpone her own pregnancy so she wouldn't be showing in wedding photos. And people were supporting these requests, calling it standing up for your special day. The conversation wasn't easy, but it was necessary. She showed me the work she'd been doing in therapy, journal entries confronting her materialism, exercises in gratitude, goals that had nothing to do with external validation. Her fiancé joined us later, and we talked about their scaled-back wedding plans. We're doing it in the studio, she said with genuine excitement. 40 people max. My photographer friends are doing the pictures as our gift. A restaurant down the street is catering family-style dinner. The whole thing will cost less than what I'd put as deposits on just the flowers for the original plan. They'd also started premarital counseling, addressing not just the materialism but communication patterns, financial planning, and expectations. Her fiancé mentioned that the counselor had them write out their values and goals. None of his mentioned possessions or status, and once she let go of the wedding industry noise, neither did hers. The wedding yesterday was perfect precisely because it wasn't perfect by traditional standards. The studio was transformed with string lights and her own photographs. She wore a simple dress she'd found at a vintage shop. Her fiancé teared up when he saw her, not because she looked like a magazine bride but because she looked like herself again. During the reception, she gave a speech that stunned everyone. She talked about getting lost in comparison and competition, about nearly destroying her relationships over imaginary standards. Then she turned to me. My brother taught me the most important lesson of my life this year, she said, voice steady despite visible emotion. He taught me that love isn't proven through sacrifice of your achievements. Real love, whether romantic or familial, means respecting boundaries and celebrating each other's successes without trying to claim them. I asked him to give up something he'd earned through years of hard work because I was too insecure to stand on my own merits. He said no, and that no saved me from building a marriage on a foundation of lies and debt. She raised her glass to me. Thank you for being strong enough to refuse to enable my worst impulses. Thank you for loving me enough to let me fail and learn. Your apartment remains yours, as it should be. And this studio, she gestured around the warmly lit space, remains mine, as it should be. Both spaces earned through our own work, both perfect for who we are. My parents were crying. Her new husband was crying. Hell, I was crying. It wasn't the apology I'd expected, but it was public accountability that meant more than private regret. Later in the evening, she pulled me aside. I know we can't just go back to how things were, she said. I broke trust that might never fully heal. But I want you to know that therapy isn't a quick fix I'm doing for the wedding. This is ongoing work. I'm committed to being better. The wedding gift I gave them was simple, a framed photo I'd taken years ago of her in her studio, totally absorbed in editing photos, golden hour light streaming through those windows she'd once called inadequate. On the back I wrote, "This was always enough." Her husband found me before they left for their honeymoon, a road trip to national parks, not the European tour she'd originally demanded. He shook my hand, then pulled me into a hug. "Thank you for standing firm," he said quietly. "You saved us both." My mother cornered me as the evening wound down. She apologized for pressuring me, admitted she'd gotten caught up in my sister's panic and lost sight of what was right. "I should have protected both of you from that situation, not enabled it," she said. "Your grandmother would actually be proud of how you handled this. She always said the worst thing you could do for someone was give them what they haven't earned." This morning, I'm sitting in my apartment, watching the sunrise paint the harbor in shades of gold and pink. The same view my sister once tried to claim, now properly appreciated as mine. But more than territory, this experience taught me about boundaries, self-respect, and the paradox that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no. My sister sent a photo from their honeymoon road trip last night, her and her husband at an overlook, mountains stretched behind them, both genuinely smiling. The caption read, "Building our life on solid ground." She's in therapy twice a month, they're in couples counseling monthly. I'm in therapy too now, working through the guilt and family dynamics that made me question my right to my own achievements. The therapist says it's common in families where one sibling's success is seen as a resource for others rather than something to simply celebrate. We're rebuilding slowly. She comes over for coffee sometimes, admits she loves the view but jokes that her studio gets better light for photography. She's had 2 successful exhibitions since the wedding, selling pieces to collectors who value her vision, not her address. Her husband started a tradition of buying one piece from each show. They're building their own collection of her work, their apartment slowly becoming a gallery of their shared journey. My mentor was right about boundaries being the hardest the first time. Since then, I've gotten better at recognizing when I'm being asked to sacrifice versus when I'm being asked to help. There's a difference between lending money for an emergency and being expected to fund someone's lifestyle. Between offering support and being demanded to surrender your achievements. To anyone facing similar situations, your accomplishments are yours. Your home, whether it's a studio or a penthouse, represents your journey, your work, your choices. You don't owe anyone your achievements as proof of love. Real family, the kind worth keeping, will celebrate your success without trying to claim it. The view from my apartment is beautiful this morning. But the view of my life, with healthy boundaries, honest relationships, and hard-won self-respect, is even better.